Boat maintenance is a big deal. I've been getting tips and hacks from Practical Sailor magazine since I was a kid, and now that I'm grown up, maybe grown up's the wrong term. Now that I'm old enough to have my own boats, maintenance is a huge part of keeping them safe and ready to use. So this week, the top 5 boat hack maintenance tips I found reading Practical Sailor. In this article from last May called Hidden Maintenance Problems, Gremlins and Electrics, Roland talks about battery charging, and it's a great read, but the tip I took from it is this. The alternator on most engines outputs at just around 13.8 volts typically. This means that the alternator is not intended to charge a lead acid battery when it's flat or completely empty, or really get the battery from 80% to 100% very efficiently. It would just take forever. It has to work very hard, and if it's even able to do that, it overworks the alternator and it means more engine runtime. Battery chargers, on the other hand, have different profiles that are meant to bring a battery back up from flat or hit that magical 100% number. I always figured if all else fails, run the engine, but this tip makes sense. The engine is a nice charging system from 50 to about 80% discharge, but if you're gonna live on the boat, which I do sometimes. Hey guys, welcome to Georgetown, Bahamas. We are anchored out. Even just for a week at a time, you really do need a more robust charging system. The alternator is not the appropriate tool for the job. Typically, shore power with a smart charger like this one, which my boat has, or a solar MPPT charger like the Victron line that everyone seems to use. I have this one. I'll leave a link to the whole article Roland wrote in the description of this video. Boat maintenance tip number 2, deck core rot and epoxy. This is for older boats probably, but if you, heaven forbid, find a soft spot in the deck, you'll be probably toying with different ideas of how to fix it. And if you're like me, trying to find a way to do it without removing the top layer of the deck to get to the rotted wood. I've seen loads of people say, just drill a hole in the top layer, gut as much of the rotted wood as you can, probably through the hole with an Allen key attached to a drill, and then inject epoxy into the hole. And sure, this has found some success, but I found an article that really puts that in perspective for me. Drew tested a bunch of different epoxy solutions that apply to the deck core rot theory. In this article, Penetrating Epoxy, Another Marketing Gimmick, I'll leave a link below for you guys. Basically, the big point in this article is this. Drew says, in Stopping Wood Rot, another article from December 2023, Practical Sailor busted the myth that you can reliably seal wood with epoxy. Some sailors have suggested that penetrating epoxy is different because it soaks into the wood. And that's true. Penetrating epoxies can soak into cracks, rotten wood, and very open-grained wood better than conventional epoxy. This is because, and this is important, they're made with low molecular weight resins to reduce the viscosity, measured in centipoise. A lower CPS means less viscosity. Conventional epoxy is about 850 CPS, or fairly thick. Penetrating epoxy is about 100 CPS, so much thinner. Varnish is about 80 CPS, and water is 1 CPS. So water will get in a lot of places that epoxy can't, even the thinnest epoxy. That's what I took from that. In fact, nothing will penetrate wet wood at all because the pores are already full, except for underwater epoxies. Exposure to water will make epoxy weaker. Epoxy cannot kill rot. No matter how deeply the epoxy penetrates, there will always be an area of infected wood between the epoxy and the good wood. This is where the rot will begin again. What this means for me is, if I have a soft spot in the deck, I'm just going to cut the top layer off. Use an oscillating tool with a sharp blade and try to be surgical in your approach. Cut a square or a rectangle a little bit bigger than the damaged core and gut any wood that's rotted. Make sure the core showing is totally and completely dry. You basically cut back to good wood. Replace the missing core and replace the top layer of glass. Sometimes you can get away with using the old top skin, sometimes you have to make a new one. And yes, this means that you'll have seams in the glasswork, but at least you did it right, and now you know the core under it is totally rot-free, and fix the leak that let the water in there in the first place. Boat maintenance tip number 3, and while I have you, can you hit the thumbs up for me? It helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you. Tip 3, plastic for everything. I love this tip. Historically, we like to use starboard for boat projects that require some plastic, like these DC and electric panels I made myself and painted black, or shims for stanchion bases or mass-mounted hardware. Starboard is an amazing product for boats because it stands up to the sun, it's super resistant to water, and we can machine it with our regular tools, our sanders and files and drill bits. But starboard, being a marine product in high density, has gotten very, very expensive. In this article from 2021, link below, is Aztec the new starboard. Aztec is a PVC material house builders use for trim, is PVC trim, which means it comes in all kinds of cool sizes, 1/2 inch thick by 4 inches by 8 feet, and it's ridiculously cheap. They mass produce this stuff for houses, so we can get it for like $10. An 8-foot strip would last me on boat projects for years. I just make little shims and stuff. The thing about PVC is, however, that it's good under compression, but it's not structural. This article points out that it's really no better than plywood for tensile or shear strength, but that's okay, I just need shims. Also, if you wanted to replace the wood pads on your coach top that your winches sit on, plastic. These DC panel doors that I made are actually a step further into the plastic world than house trim. They're actually cutting boards I got at the dollar store, $1.50 each, and I machined and shaped them just how I wanted them before painting them black. You'd never know it, and they'll likely outlast the boat. Cheap plastic is excellent. Tip number 4, the pea smell. For anyone with a urine diverting toilet like my Nature's Head, the pea smell can come in after a few days. I found this article on just that, additives to fight urine odor. This is not for people with an all-you-can-flush holding tank. This is just for urine. The article tests everything under the sun and explains why urine doesn't smell off the hop, but it will start to smell after a few days, which is very true. I've found that. It's all about nitrogen and potassium and bacteria, but suffice it to say, we don't want a smell. That's one of the reasons we love composting toilets. They don't really smell. After reading the whole article, I decided the solution that will work for my boat best is white vinegar. The article explains by adding a few inches to the bottle before starting, the pH is lowered enough to prevent fermentation. In practice, we could still smell the vinegar, but not much else. A favorite among users and manufacturers because it's economical and widely available. Spray a mist of vinegar on the urine diverter after each use as well. It's easy, effective, and most of all, white vinegar is very cheap. And it's something I can keep in a little spray bottle in the head of the boat, even with kids running around. It's not really a chemical that's going to hurt them if they get into it. It's just vinegar. And boat maintenance tip number 5. Teak oil. If you're anything like me, your teak looks like this, all gray and weathered, and it's ready for something to make it look super fancy and beautiful like I see on much nicer boats. This article catches my attention right away. It says science and technology have turned the once simple task of choosing a wood coating into a brain-numbing chore best suited for those with a degree in chemistry. That's definitely true. From the basic old school tung oil or spar varnish, coatings have evolved into synthetic concoctions that last longer, protect the wood better, and are easier to apply. Their formulas include blockers for UV rays, additives that we can't pronounce, and pigments that look more like paint. The whole article is well worth a read. I'll leave a link below. But I'm going to sum it up in what part of the article spoke to me specifically. The article's conclusion says this: the Cetol products offer the best option for taking the middle ground between good looks and durability. They won't have the classic look of varnish, but for 25% of the labor, you get a very similar result. This speaks to me, the middle ground between looks and function. That's me. And 25% of the labor? That sounds wonderful. Plus, I found this video of Naptown sailing while he's applying it, and it looks beautiful and it's easy. I found a quarter Cetol for $60, and when it gets here, I'll make another video for you guys to share my experience with it. Those are 5 top tips I found while reading Practical Sailor magazine. Again, links to all the articles are below in the description. What boat maintenance hacks do you know? Leave them in the comments and share what we know. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, please. I'll see you guys next time.